Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the noise and zero in on the essential insights from today's most compelling stories. We've gathered a stack of fascinating sources for you, and our mission is to distill the core knowledge and surprising facts that really matter. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into some, well, truly groundbreaking science. It could really redefine our approach to Alzheimer's disease. Our first source is from the science section, and it unpacks research that challenges some long-held beliefs, shifting focus to an unexpected yet critical area, the brain's own immune cells.
It's a classic example, isn't it, how scientific progress often comes from reevaluating what we thought we knew, looking beyond the obvious to the complex interplay of lesser understood components, in this case, the unsung heroes, or perhaps anti-heroes, of brain health, standing right next to the neurons we've always focused on.
Right. For decades, the dominant theory around Alzheimer's has revolved around the accumulation of two key proteins, amyloid beta and tau. These proteins misfold and aggregate, forming these sticky deposits. They disrupt neural communication, lead to significant neuronal damage, manifesting as memory loss and cognitive decline. And what's particularly striking, I think, is that this destructive process often begins years, maybe even decades, before any symptoms emerge. It's this stealthy progression that makes early intervention so incredibly challenging.
That's absolutely been the prevailing view, almost a singular focus, you could say. But new research is increasingly turning our attention towards microglia. Think of these as the brain's resident immune cells. In a healthy brain, they're like the diligent cleanup crew, constantly patrolling, identifying, and clearing out waste products and those very toxic proteins like amyloid beta. Their proper function is just crucial for neuronal health. So the perplexing question has always been, why do they seem to fail so spectacularly in Alzheimer's patients?
Exactly. And what the Purdue University study, published in Immunity, uncovered takes this understanding in a really surprising new direction. They suggest that it's actually the fat metabolism within these microglia that might be a core driver of the disease's progression. Here's the key finding. Microglia located near amyloid plaques were found to be, well, literally engorged with lipid droplets, particularly in the hippocampus, the brain's primary memory center. As co-lead author Priya Prakash observed, the closer they are, the fatter they get.
And this isn't random. The study pinpointed a specific enzyme, DGA2, as a crucial player here. DGA2 acts like an enzyme that packs loose potentially toxic free fatty acids into these inert storage bundles called triacylglycerols, which make up the lipid droplets. The problem seems to be that when microglia are constantly exposed to amyloid beta, this packing mechanism goes into overdrive. And while storing fat is usually a survival mechanism for cells under stress, in this chronic environment, it backfires. This excessive lipid buildup actually cripples their crucial ability to engulf and digest more amyloid beta. It creates a vicious cycle. So more plaques lead to more fat in microglia, which leads to more dysfunction, and ultimately even more plaques buildup.
Wow. But what's truly exciting is the potential for reversal demonstrated in this study. Researchers managed to block DGA2 in genetically engineered mice, the ones designed to mimic human Alzheimer's. And the outcome? A dramatic reduction in fat accumulation in the microglia and, importantly, a restoration of their plaque-clearing ability. And get this, even a mere 1-week treatment in aged mice with severe pathology resulted in over a 50% reduction in plaque burden and significantly reduced markers of neuronal damage, too. I mean, how dramatic is a 50% plaque reduction in aged mice in just 1 week? What does that signify for potential human trials?
Oh, it's profoundly significant, especially for such a rapid response in aged, heavily pathological models. And you're right, while lipid droplets can be protective, allowing cells to safely store excess fat during stress, this research reveals that in the relentless presence of amyloid beta, this usually beneficial response transforms into a detrimental one. The study authors suggest microglia might be sacrificing their primary immune function, their ability to clean in exchange for what they perceive as lipid safety. That trade-off could be a really pivotal step in the disease's progression. Of course, DGA2 is widespread, so systemic targeting is complex, it's in lots of cells. But the development of a microglia-specific degrader is a promising leap towards a more targeted therapy. If we connect this to the bigger picture, well, this discovery shifts our understanding of Alzheimer's. It's not just about removing plaques anymore. It's potentially about re-educating the brain's own immune system, focusing on restoring those natural protective functions. That's a far more nuanced and perhaps a truly effective therapeutic avenue.
That insight into Alzheimer's, it really reminds us how complex even biological systems are. Okay, now let's navigate the equally complex currents of global economics and politics, from the microscopic to the geopolitical. Our next deep dive explores the shifting alliances on the world stage and how they're creating ripples, particularly for the U.S. dollar. Our next source, this one's from the FAQ section, it zeroes in on former U.S. President Donald Trump's repeated threats concerning the BRICS grouping. From Trump's perspective, this burgeoning economic bloc is inherently anti-American and presents a direct threat to the dollar that he needed to neutralize. Okay. This stance, as you might recall, was articulated even before he was sworn in for his potential second term.
Yes, his rhetoric has certainly been very specific. Initially, we heard talk of a blanket 100% tariff on BRICS members if they dared to create a common currency or actively replace the dollar. That was later softened to a 10% tariff just for being a member. Beyond the group, there were also proposed significant tariffs on individual nations, like 50% on Brazil, 30% on South Africa, and an astonishing 500% tariff on Russian oil imports. So this raises an important question. What exactly has BRICS been doing that has provoked such a strong reaction from Washington?
That really is the core of the issue, isn't it? The article points to the BRICS Cross-Border Payments Initiative. Now, this isn't about a single currency, but rather a system designed to facilitate trade within BRICS nations, using their respective local currencies and other non-dollar mechanisms. It's a movement that's certainly gained significant traction, especially in the wake of Western sanctions on Russia. That spurred many Global South partners to seek alternatives to dollar-denominated trade. So from a broader perspective, is this initiative truly a direct challenge to the dollar's global dominance, or is it something else entirely?
Well, the BRICS members themselves have consistently pushed back against these concerns of de-dollarization. The South African Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for instance, issued a detailed statement clarifying that their efforts to use national currencies for internal trade are distinct from seeking to replace the dollar as the global standard.
Right.
Similarly, the recent BRICS Rio Declaration of 2025, while expressing serious concerns over unilateral tariff measures without explicitly naming the U.S., it focused on continuing discussions for greater interoperability of BRICS payment systems, not on establishing an alternative global reserve currency. So this suggests a more pragmatic, maybe less confrontational approach than perceived by some.
Okay, and where does India, a crucial member of BRICS, position itself amid these tensions? The Modi government has reportedly strenuously objected to the BRICS grouping being labeled anti-American. That's a stance that makes strategic sense given India's ongoing pursuit of a free trade agreement with the U.S., right?
Exactly. India's official position on this has been quite explicit and consistent. In December 2024, the Minister for Finance, Pankaj Chaudhary, stated in a parliamentary response that U.S. allegations referred to a report by Russia during its BRICS chairmanship. This report discussed possible alternatives relating to cross-border payments and leveraging existing technology to find an alternative currency. But Chaudhary emphasized that this report was only taken note of by other BRICS members, not formally adopted as policy. Then, in March 2025, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar reinforced this, stating categorically that there is no Indian policy to replace the dollar. He did, however, concede that BRICS members have differences, and there isn't a unified position of the grouping on the issue, which really highlights the internal complexities of the bloc.
It certainly paints a picture of a dynamic interplay of diverse national interests on the global stage. Much more complex than just a monolithic bloc united against a single perceived adversary. Okay, moving from international alliances and economic threats, let's shift our lens to a pressing economic issue much closer to home for millions: the contentious debate surrounding India's inequality. Our next article, also from the FAQ section, highlights a recent World Bank report that presented what it described as salutary outcomes for India. The report claimed a drastic reduction in extreme poverty and, quite surprisingly, a significant fall in the Gini coefficient for consumption, implying India has one of the lowest levels of inequality worldwide. You can imagine the government certainly emphasized those findings.
Yes, and this is where the nuance is absolutely critical. As many analysts have pointed out, the data presented by the World Bank can be quite deceptive. What's fascinating here is that the World Bank's figures relate specifically to consumption inequality, not income or wealth inequality. And consumption inequality will almost always appear lower than income or wealth inequality. The reason is pretty straightforward. Poorer households spend a larger proportion of their income on basic necessities, while wealthier households, once their needs are met, save a significant portion of their higher incomes. So it's entirely possible for consumption inequality to appear to reduce or stay low, even when income and wealth disparities are starkly widening.
That distinction is absolutely crucial. And the data sources themselves introduce further complications, right? The consumption data used comes from the Household Consumption Expenditure Surveys, or HCES. These surveys are widely acknowledged for their inability to accurately capture extremely high incomes, so that leads to an underestimation of actual inequality at the top. Moreover, there were significant methodological changes between the 2011-12 and 2022-23 surveys, making direct apples-to-apples comparisons problematic, a caution even the official HCS release itself includes.
Indeed. So, what does the true picture reveal when we look beyond just consumption? Researchers at the World Inequality Database, co-founded by Thomas Piketty, they analyze a broader range of data, including tax records, lists of the ultra-wealthy, to provide a more comprehensive view. Their findings for India in 2022-23 show the Gini coefficient for pre-tax income at 0.61. Now, to put that into perspective, on a scale where 0 is perfect equality and 1 is total inequality, India's figure means it ranks among the most unequal economies in the world. 170 other economies exhibited lower inequality out of the 218 considered. And for wealth inequality, the Gini is even higher, a staggering 0.75. That really drives home how concentrated wealth is compared to income or consumption.
So what does this all mean for the everyday Indian, beyond these abstract numbers? The data from the WID reveals a truly staggering concentration of wealth. In 2022-23, the top 1% of adults in India controlled almost 40% of the nation's net personal wealth. That is an extraordinary level of concentration. In fact, only 4 other economies globally, Uruguay, Eswatini, Russia, and South Africa, have a higher level of wealth concentration in their top 1%. That's a powerful comparison.
It fundamentally underscores the argument that the World Bank's consumption-based picture simply does not characterize the current reality of India's economic landscape. Instead, what we're seeing is that extreme concentration of incomes and wealth has accompanied India's rapid growth. This isn't just an economic statistic. It risks stifling social mobility, concentrating political power, and fundamentally challenging the long-term inclusive growth story India aims to tell. It signals a potential future where opportunity is severely limited for the vast majority.
It's a stark and really important distinction between reported consumption inequality and the actual deeper disparities in income and wealth that define the Indian economic experience. Okay, from economic disparities, we now turn our attention to a pressing humanitarian issue impacting a state on India's eastern border, Mizoram. Mizoram has been wrestling with a significant refugee crisis ever since the February 2021 military coup in Myanmar. And the situation recently escalated dramatically. In the first week of July alone, some 4,000 refugees poured across the border from Myanmar following a fierce battle that erupted between rival armed groups.
Yeah, this new sudden influx was indeed triggered by intense fighting. 2 anti-junta groups, the Chin National Defense Force and the Chinland Defense Force Huangkoram, who had previously united against the military junta, actually turned on each other. They were battling for control over areas in Myanmar's Chin state that are strategically important for trade with India. And it's crucial to understand the deep-rooted ethnic connection here. The dominant Mizo community in Mizoram shares profound ethnic and familial ties with the Chins of Myanmar, the Boms of Bangladesh, and the Kukizos of Manipur. They all belong to what's known as the Greater Zo ethnic group, which has historically shaped the local response to these cross-border movements.
The scale of this humanitarian challenge is just immense. Mizoram is currently housing over 40,000 shelter seekers from Bangladesh, Myanmar, and even Manipur within India. When the crisis first began after the 2021 coup, Mizoram's government, alongside civil society and local villagers, extended remarkable hospitality, providing food, shelter, security purely on humanitarian grounds. This happened despite the Ministry of Home Affairs asking states not to admit refugees. It's important to note India isn't a signatory to the 1951 Refugee Convention and lacks a specific national law on refugees. They typically manage them under foreigner laws. Mizoram has historically been accustomed to Myanmar nationals moving in and out, even prior to the free movement regime, which the center recently announced it would suspend, though a formal bilateral agreement is still pending.
That's a key point about India's broader stance. While India has a long history of hosting various refugee populations, the lack of a formal national refugee law means New Delhi maintains a hard line on border control. This creates a challenging paradox for states like Mizoram, caught between that humanitarian impulse and national policy. The free movement regime, while allowing traditional cross-border ties, has also been viewed by some as a conduit for illicit activities, further complicating the central government's approach.
Right. What's particularly compelling here is the discernible shift in local sentiment within Mizoram. Initially, there was widespread and open hospitality, but now villagers themselves are feeling the severe strain. We've seen concrete examples like the Farkhan Village Council in Champhai district issuing an order back in March for all Myanmar refugees to cease trading activities and remain confined to designated camps by March 31st. Civil society groups have issued similar directives in other areas. This marks a stark departure from that initial warmth, with refugees reportedly being threatened with eviction if they fail to comply.
Uh-huh. This mounting local pressure has undeniably influenced the state government's evolving position. While the chief minister initially cited ethnic affiliations and humanitarian reasons for not pushing refugees back, his tone has since shifted somewhat. He's now expressed concerns that the free movement regime was linked to smuggling activities and that some refugees were taking advantage of the crisis by violating Indian laws. His government has also intensified efforts pushing the center to obtain presidential assent for the Mizoram Maintenance of Household Registers bill. That's a piece of legislation that specifically seeks to identify foreigners in the state.
Mhm.
This dynamic really highlights the complex tightrope walk for regional governments, balancing those deeply felt humanitarian concerns and ethnic ties with broader national security implications, demographic shifts, and the undeniable strain on limited local resources.
It's a truly multifaceted challenge, isn't it? With no easy answers for Mizoram as it navigates this complex crisis. Thank you for listening. If today's deep dive gave you something useful, consider following us on Spotify so you're the first to hear the next one. You can give suggestions by contacting us on the Twitter handle given in the episode description. We are always eager to hear what our listeners want to be informed about. We wish you a great day.